Hi, Mrs. Brooks. Principal Crowell's voice boomed through the four chambers of his office, the sound resonating with that signature hum that always made the coffee cups rattle. We truly appreciate your ongoing interest in our disciplinary measures, but I can assure you that everything is well within our control. I gave a smile. It wasn't the warm, proud smile I usually give my son Ethan when he nails a xenobiology exam. No, this was the kind of smile I used when I was dealing with tough negotiators right before things escalated. Everything's under control? I repeated, unable to mask the disbelief. Is that why my son came home last week with 3 bruises? Bruises that, curiously, no one on your staff noticed? The fluorescent lights in the conference room flickered, casting erratic shadows across Crowell's Shiltu faceplates. The other parents, humans and various alien species alike, shifted awkwardly in their seats, silently bracing for what was coming. They had seen this all before. Mrs. Brooks, Crowell's secondary arms fluttered in what I recognized as a nervous tic. Your son's unique biology makes him more prone to certain injuries. The gravity differentials alone. Enough with the diplomatic double talk. I cut him off, earning a few surprised gasps from some of the more traditional parents. Ethan's been training in 1.5 G since he could walk. He doesn't get bruises from gravity. He gets them from being shoved into lockers by those 3 Yethra Empire exchange students you keep making excuses for. The room temperature seemed to plummet, and it wasn't just because of the air conditioning. Mentioning the Yethra Empire had that effect. They were the newest addition to the Galactic Federation, and everyone was tiptoeing around them to keep things cordial. Everyone except the parents, that is. Liam Hargrave, another human parent sitting a few seats away, cleared his throat. It was a subtle signal we had arranged earlier. His daughter was in the same class as Ethan, and as an intelligence analyst, he had been quietly tracking the pattern of these incidents. His cough meant he had confirmed what I suspected through his sources. Principal Crowell, I began again, standing up deliberately. My movements were precise, every step calculated, just like everything I did, even if most people didn't notice. I've been patient. I've followed every protocol. I've filled out incident reports, attended sensitivity workshops, and kept my cool, but this ends now. With a sharp gesture, I summoned a holographic display from my datapad, casting it against the wall. The security footage sprang to life, showing 3 tall, serpentine figures cornering my son in the quantum physics lab. The footage was crystal clear, thanks to some upgrades Liam had quietly made to the school's security system. This was yesterday, I said, my voice as cold as ice. And those injuries were not accidental. Now, before you try to hide behind confidentiality concerns about the Yethran students, let me remind you that as PTA president, I have full access to all footage regarding student safety incidents. Crowell's faceplates clicked rapidly, the alien equivalent of a human breaking into a cold sweat. Mrs. Brooks, he stammered. This footage appears to have been enhanced beyond the standard resolution. Does that make what's shown any less real? I shot back, raising an eyebrow. The parents in the room leaned forward, their own silent stories of ignored incidents and dismissed concerns reflecting in their eyes. We will investigate the matter, Crowell finally admitted, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I corrected him, picking up my datapad. We will investigate. The PTA is forming a special committee to ensure student safety, effective immediately. As I gathered my things to leave, I glanced at my reflection in the window. The suburban mom disguise was flawless. Sensible shoes, a no-nonsense haircut, minimal makeup. No one would ever guess that just 5 years ago, I was leading covert extraction missions on planets so hostile they made Australia's outback look like a nature walk. But that's what Death Worlder parents are good at. Blending in, following the rules, playing nice, right up until someone threatens our kids. Then, we show exactly why our home planet was classified as a death world in the first place. I slid into my minivan, already drafting a message to my old Special Forces network in my mind. Because if there's one thing more dangerous than a highly trained operative, it's a trained operative with a mom mission. And I could feel it in my bones that things were about to get very interesting at Interstellar Academy. Getting a call from your kid during school hours is never good. But when your combat-trained teenager, who benches small hovercars for fun, calls you in the middle of third period, it's definitely time to panic. Mom, Ethan's voice was steady, but I could hear the strain. Remember how you told me to call if things got worse? I was already reaching for my keys before he finished the sentence. What happened? The Yethrin trio cornered me in the 0G gym, he said. They disabled the gravity controls while I was at the ceiling. He paused, followed by a pained grunt. Turns out even Death World bones don't enjoy falling 20 meters. My grip on the minivan's steering wheel tightened. Are you in the nurse's office? Nah. They don't want to cause an incident, because of my fragile human physiology, he replied, sarcasm dripping from his voice. I'm in the bathroom trying to stop the bleeding. Also, I think my ribs are doing that thing where they're not quite broken, but really wish they were. 10 minutes later, I pulled into the school parking lot, conveniently parked next to the spot labeled reserved for diplomatic vehicles only. Oops, my bad. I must have mistaken the golden paint job on my perfectly ordinary mom van for something more diplomatic. The school entrance scanner beeped with displeasure, clearly detecting the raised levels of adrenaline in my bloodstream. I gave it my best, just a worried mom smile, though I'm pretty sure the scanner remembered the last time it tried to deny me entry and wisely decided not to repeat the mistake. I found Ethan in the nearest bathroom, holding ice packs to his face. The bruises were already turning shades that could have inspired a combat medic to write poetry about tissue damage. I helped him stand, still holding back my frustration. Want to tell me how disabling safety equipment and assaulting a student isn't grounds for immediate expulsion? Ethan's laugh quickly turned into a wince. Oh, you're going to love this. They're calling it a cultural misunderstanding. Apparently, in Yethrin culture, dropping someone from a height is considered a traditional greeting. Really? I raised an eyebrow. And I suppose in human culture, my foot traditionally finds its way into certain anatomical regions. That got a real laugh from Ethan, though it was followed by more wincing. Mom, your diplomatic skills are showing again. We made our way to Principal Kral's office, where we found not only the principal, but also 3 very smug-looking Yethrin teenagers and their faculty advisor. The teenagers, with their serpentine bodies, coiled in what their species considered a relaxed posture, but I could see how they strategically positioned themselves between us and the exit. Cute. They thought they were being tactical. Mrs. Brooks, Principal Kral began, his voice hitting that infuriating frequency that always meant he was about to drown me in bureaucratic nonsense. I understand that you're upset, but I assure you, this was simply a cultural misunderstanding. Fascinating, I replied, pulling out my datapad. I just had a lovely conversation with Dr. Rax Atul at the Xenocultural Institute. A wonderful person, 4 PhDs in Yethrin social studies. They seemed quite surprised to hear about this so-called greeting ritual. In fact, they used words like impossible and fabricated. The faculty advisor's scales shifted colors slightly. Gotcha. Furthermore, I continued, pulling up more files, I've been in touch with several other parents. Turns out, we've been having quite a few of these cultural misunderstandings lately. The Olivia Parker twins, the Grace kid, little Madison from Ethan's xenobiology class. Turns out they've all been victims of these charming traditional greetings. Just as I spoke, my phone buzzed with a message from Abigail White. Her daughter had come home last week with bruises similar to Ethan's, and she'd started a parent support group chat. It was blowing up with similar stories. Apparently, we Deathworlder parents had all decided today was the day to stop being diplomatic. Principal Kral, I said, my voice dripping sweetness but with an underlying steel edge. I've just received some interesting news. It seems that 37 human families are experiencing these cultural misunderstandings. We're deeply concerned about our poor, fragile children and their inability to adapt to alien customs. So concerned, in fact, that we're considering bringing this to the attention of the Human Diplomatic Corps. The room temperature dropped several degrees at the mention of the Human Diplomatic Corps, more affectionately known as the Death Wears a Mad Department. They had a rather effective way of making problems disappear, usually along with the careers of anyone causing them. That won't be necessary, the faculty advisor said quickly, his scales now shifting to a shade of worried purple. Perhaps we could discuss this internally? Of course, I replied with a smile. The PTA is actually meeting right now in the cafeteria, all 37 families. We're very eager to have this discussion. As if on cue, My phone buzzed again. Liam Hargrave had arrived with the other parents. His message was short. Position secured. Bring the party to us. I looked at the Yethrin teenagers, who suddenly seemed less interested in blocking the exit. Shall we continue this discussion with everyone present? I believe in maintaining proper diplomatic channels. The best part about being a former Special Forces operator turned mom? Nobody expects you to know exactly how to set up a perfect ambush using nothing but a PTA meeting and a group chat. But that's the thing about Death Worlder parents. We never really stop being operators. We just get more creative about deploying our skills. As we walked toward the cafeteria, I quickly sent a message to the group chat. The Hawks are coming to the nest. Operation Bake Sale is a go. Time to show them why you never ever mess with our kids. Digital blood leaves traces, no matter how careful you are. That's what I kept telling myself as I sat in my home office at 3 a.m., scrolling through school records with the kind of focus I used to reserve for analyzing enemy fortifications. The soft glow of multiple screens lit up years of incident reports, strikingly similar in their dismissal of human student complaints. My phone buzzed. Liam Hargrave's name flashed on the screen. Tell me you're seeing this too, he texted, without any preamble. If by this you mean the statistically impossible number of accidents happening to human students since the Yethrin Empire joined the school board, yeah, I'm seeing it. I pulled up another file, showing medical records, and I'm also seeing something very interesting about the timing. The diplomatic summit, Liam replied almost instantly. Every major incident seemed to spike just before or after diplomatic meetings between Earth and the Yethrin Empire. I leaned back in my chair, memories of military intelligence briefings resurfacing. They're testing responses, using our kids as diplomatic thermometers. Exactly. Whenever Earth pushes back on a trade agreement or military alliance, our children seriously start having accidents. I finished reading the file, my blood boiling. Those scaly bastards are using our kids to gauge how much pressure they can apply during negotiations. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting of what we had started calling the Parent Defense Coalition. We gathered in Abigail White's basement, officially for a book club, because nothing makes bureaucrats more nervous than parents who read. All right, people, here's what we know, I began, projecting the data onto the wall. 20 parents sat around Abigail's ping-pong table, looking more like a war council than a suburban reading group. The Yethrin Empire isn't just bullying our kids. They're conducting systematic research on human responses to threats. Olivia Parker, whose daughter Madison had mysteriously fallen in the quantum physics lab last month, raised her hand. I've been keeping an eye on their communications, Abigail said, shrugging at our surprised looks. What? I was a signals intelligence specialist before I became a soccer mom. The words hit with a certain clarity. The Yethrin students are reporting directly to their embassy, she continued, her voice steady. Every incident, every response, every time we file a complaint or even back down, it all gets logged into their diplomatic assessment database. So they're using our kids like test subjects? Abigail's knuckles went white around her coffee mug as she spoke, her calm deadly, like a combat engineer preparing for a mission. Exactly, Liam affirmed, pulling up more data. And here's the kicker. They're specifically targeting children of former military personnel. They think they're being subtle, but he gestured toward a chart showing incident distributions. They're focusing on us because they believe we're too domesticated to fight back. A ripple of laughter spread through the room, deep, resonant, and the kind of laugh that would have had smarter predators reconsidering their life choices. The Yethrin Empire had somehow convinced themselves that retirement and parenthood had softened us, that we traded our skills for minivan keys and strategic thinking for PTA meeting agendas. Well said, Kyle muttered, absently folding an origami crane from what I could have sworn was classified intelligence paper. Maybe it's time to show them the error in their risk assessment. Carefully, I warned, though I could feel the familiar energy building within me. We need to handle this the right way. Document everything. Build a solid case. I pulled up another screen displaying school board protocols. We're doing this by the book. Speaking of books, Abigail reached under the ping-pong table and pulled out a thick stack of files, dropping them onto the table with a decisive thud. I brought some reading material, she said with an almost predatory grin. Official Yethrin Empire diplomatic protocols, she continued, tapping one of the files. Found these in the school's xenocultural database. Apparently, they're obsessed with following proper procedures, especially when it comes to what happens if those procedures are violated. "Oh, this should be good," Liam said, already smiling like he knew where this was going. "So, what happens if they step out of line?" Abigail's grin widened, sharp as a blade. "Any deviation from official protocol automatically triggers a formal review by their Grand Diplomatic Council, complete with full transparency requirements." I felt my own smile creep up, the satisfaction of a plan falling into place. So, if someone were to file complaints using their exact diplomatic language, citing their own protocols, they'd be forced to investigate, Olivia finished, catching the thread. "Not just the local embassy," Kyle added, his voice growing eager. "The whole thing would go straight to their highest authorities, and all the evidence would have to be made public." I glanced around the room at these so-called domesticated Deathworlders, a soccer mom who could intercept alien communications, a book club member who could quote classified diplomatic procedures, a PTA treasurer who could turn office supplies into surveillance equipment. "All right," I said, pulling up a new document. "Let's show them what happens when they mistake parents for pushovers. Olivia, I need everything you have on their communication protocols. Abigail, cross-reference those diplomatic procedures with every incident report we've got. Liam, start building me a data pattern that even they can't dismiss as coincidence." I cracked my knuckles, the sound sharp in the silence. It's time to remind them exactly why Earth is classified as a death world. As everyone began to work with military precision, dressed up as suburban efficiency, I couldn't help but think how the Yethran Empire had completely misjudged us. They thought they were dealing with retired warriors who'd gone soft. They were about to learn that a parent's protective instinct made our combat training look like a day at the playground. 3 days after our basement war council, my dining room had transformed into something unrecognizable. It looked like a cross between a combat intelligence center and a PTA meeting. Liam Hargrave was stationed at my kitchen counter, surrounded by holographic displays, his fingers dancing across them, pulling up data patterns that would have made any conspiracy theorist's heart race. "Check this out," he said, manipulating one of the displays. "Every time a human colony pushes back on a Yethran trade agreement—" "Let me guess," I interrupted, sliding him another cup of coffee. "A sudden spike in human student accidents?" "Better," he grinned, pulling up another chart. "The incidents are coordinated across multiple schools, New Terra, Mars Colony, Europa Station, anywhere they have exchange students." Olivia Parker walked in, tablet in hand, looking like she hadn't slept since our last meeting. "It gets better," she said, dropping into a chair like she had the weight of the universe on her shoulders. "I cracked their encryption. Those incident reports? They're being sent directly to something called the Behavioral Analysis Division of the Yethran Diplomatic Corps." "Behavioral analysis?" Abigail asked, looking up from where she was disassembling what appeared to be a Yethran communication device using nothing but kitchen utensils. "That sounds suspiciously like they're studying us," Kyle finished, walking in with more coffee and what appeared to be classified documents disguised as takeout menus, testing our breaking points, seeing how far they can push before the supposedly civilized Deathworlders show their true nature. I pulled up the school's security feeds on my main screen, courtesy of some modifications that the system administrators definitely didn't approve of. "Look at this pattern," I said, highlighting several incidents. "They're not just testing responses, they're escalating systematically." Liam nodded, pulling up his own data. First, it was isolated incidents, then group intimidation. Now they're disabling safety equipment. They're pushing boundaries, seeing what triggers parental intervention versus official complaints. And now, well, what we're doing right now. Olivia finished, her tone solid with determination, building a case. "But why?" Abigail asked, successfully transforming the alien device into something that could probably violate several intergalactic treaties. "What's their endgame?" Peaceful protest is an art form. The trick is making it look completely harmless while positioning every piece exactly where you need it. As I stood on the steps of Interstellar Academy, surrounded by parents holding signs with slogans like "Hugs Not Thugs" and "Peace Through Understanding," I couldn't help but appreciate the beautiful complexity of our operation. The meter drones are in position, Olivia murmured into her comms, disguised as a parent volunteer badge. Channel 7 is broadcasting live. Perfect, I said, adjusting my concerned parent for peace shirt and checking my data pad. Nothing makes bureaucrats more nervous than public attention. Right on schedule, Principal Krall emerged from the main entrance, flanked by the Yethrin Empire's local diplomatic representative, Ambassador Vexer. Mrs. Brooks, the ambassador's translator rendered his client's speech into standard galactic. This display is unnecessary. We can resolve any concerns through proper diplomatic channels. I smiled my best PTA president smile. Oh, but we are using proper channels. Article 7, Section 3 of the Yethrin Diplomatic Code specifically allows for public demonstration as a form of cultural exchange. I paused, watching his scales ripple in surprise. We're very interested in cultural exchange, Ambassador. In fact, we've been studying your customs quite thoroughly. Behind me, 37 parents continued their peaceful protest with military precision, poorly disguised as suburban chaos. Abigail had positioned her group near the science wing, their signs, accidentally, blocking access to certain security systems. Kyle's team was having a very loud discussion about alien-human friendship near the main power junction. And Liam, bless his intelligence analyst heart, had somehow convinced a group of parents to practice traditional Earth dance moves that just happened to secure every strategic exit point. Your dedication to understanding our culture is admirable, Ambassador Vexer said carefully, his secondary eyes narrowing. However, these accusations of systematic harassment— Oh, we're well past accusations, I interrupted cheerfully, pulling up my datapad. We've moved on to comprehensive documentation. Would you like to see the pattern analysis of incidents correlating with your diplomatic initiatives? Or should we start with the encrypted transmissions between your student observers and the Behavioral Analysis Division? The ambassador's scales shifted to a fascinating shade of alarmed purple, and Principal Krall's mandibles clicked rapidly. These are serious allegations, the ambassador began. They certainly are, I agreed pleasantly. Almost as serious as violating Section 12 of the Galactic Education Accord, the one about using educational institutions for military intelligence gathering. I understand the penalties for that are quite severe. A new voice joined the conversation. Liam Hargrave, he said, still wearing his Peace Through Friendship button, his smile unwavering. The Human Diplomatic Corps takes a particularly dim view of that, Ambassador Vexer said, his voice gaining a hard edge as he tried to regain control of the situation. Just another concerned parent. Liam smiled easily, not missing a beat. Although, I should mention that my recent concerns led me to file some rather interesting reports with the Galactic Federation's Education Oversight Committee. I could see the ambassador processing this, his eyes flicking between us. Behind us, our protest group had somehow managed to form a perfect containment pattern while singing We Are the Galaxy, the off-key rendition adding a level of absurdity to the situation. Perhaps, the ambassador said slowly, his voice more cautious now, we should discuss this in a more private setting. What a wonderful idea, I beamed. The PTA meeting room is available. We even baked cookies. As we walked inside, Olivia's voice came through my earpiece. Yethrin Embassy just went into emergency session. They're scrambling to contain this. Good, I sub-vocalized. Abigail, the science wing is secure, came her reply. All their special equipment has been thoroughly inspected for safety compliance. Kyle, the main power grid is under our control. For safety reasons, of course, Kyle added with a slight chuckle. The ambassador was led into our PTA meeting room, where he found himself facing a semicircle of smiling parents. The room was a carefully constructed picture of suburban normalcy, comfortable chairs, friendly faces, cookies on every table, but there was no escaping the fact that we controlled every exit. Now then, I said, taking my seat with a deliberate calm, let's talk about your empire's fascinating approach to diplomatic research. Mrs. Brooks, the ambassador began, his voice tightening with a subtle panic. I assure you there has been a misunderstanding. Oh, I completely agree. I nodded thoughtfully. You misunderstood quite a few things, like thinking that retiring from military service meant we lost our skills, or that becoming parents made us less dangerous. I smiled sweetly, watching his scales flicker in response. Would you like to know what else you misunderstood? On cue, Liam activated his datapad. Holographic displays lit up around the room, showing an overwhelming amount of detailed analysis. Every incident, every report, every encrypted transmission. The ambassador's scales shifted through colors faster than a malfunctioning chameleon. I could almost see him regretting his earlier decisions. This parent group, I continued in the same calm voice, includes 3 intelligence analysts, 4 combat engineers, 2 communication specialists. I paused for dramatic effect, and 1 former Special Forces operative who really doesn't appreciate her son being used as a test subject. The ambassador's translator glitched slightly, unable to process the weight of the information. You were all military? Oh yes, Abigail chimed in, her voice light but with an edge. These days we prefer terms like room parent and field trip coordinator. Would you like to know what else we are? Olivia asked, glancing up from her PTA secretary notes, her tone as casual as if she were planning next week's bake sale. We're very good at paperwork. Every incident, every violation, all documented according to your very own diplomatic protocols. The Galactic Federation takes a very strong stance against using educational institutions for intelligence gathering, Liam added helpfully, his smile tight, especially when it involves endangering students. I leaned forward, my voice dropping just slightly. So, here's what's going to happen, Ambassador. You're going to immediately cease all intelligence operations in educational facilities. You're going to implement real safeguards for all students, and you're going to do it through proper diplomatic channels, with full transparency. And if we refuse... The ambassador's voice now had an unmistakable edge to it. Then we release everything, I said simply, to the media, to the Federation Council, to every parent group in every school where you have exchange students. How do you think other species will react to learning that you've been using children as political test subjects? The room grew very still. Outside, our protest group had started singing another friendship song, this time their voices carrying just enough of an edge to let it be known they could easily switch to war chants. You're threatening us? The ambassador's voice was cold, but it lacked the certainty it had before. Not at all, I replied cheerfully. We're engaging in diplomatic negotiations while following all proper protocols. It's just that our version of diplomacy includes thoroughly documented evidence and absolutely no patience for threats to our children. The ambassador looked around the room, visibly unnerved by the smiling faces of parents who had probably organized more complex military operations than his entire diplomatic corps. His scales shifted into a shade of resigned acceptance. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should discuss the terms of these new safety protocols. Wonderful, I beamed, pulling out a stack of documents. We've already drafted a proposal. Would you like a cookie while we review it? They're homemade. As we began negotiating, I couldn't help but think about how the Yethran Empire had underestimated the power of suburban parents. They never expected their intelligence operation to end like this, diplomatically outmaneuvered by a group of parents armed with baked goods and enough documentation to make a bureaucrat weep. But that's the thing about underestimating Death World parents. We never really stop being warriors. We just find more creative ways to win our battles. The thing about elite military units is that they tend to make an entrance. The Yethran Empire's finest certainly tried their best, materializing from their stealth transports outside Interstellar Academy during our monthly PTA bake sale. Very dramatic, very intimidating, very poorly timed. Hostile forces deploying, Olivia murmured into her cookie-decorated apron's hidden comm unit. 12 operators, standard Yethran combat formation. I adjusted my Best Brownies 2024 banner while assessing their tactical positioning. Standard formation. How disappointing. Abigail, how's our perimeter? I asked, scanning the situation with practiced ease. Sociable moms in position, Abigail replied from her cupcake station, her voice carrying a note of glee. They have no idea that the jump rope zone is actually a containment grid. The lead Yethran operative, Commander Zalar, according to my hastily updated intelligence briefing, approached our bake sale table, his combat armor gleaming menacingly in the morning sun, the glitter now floating through their ventilation systems, courtesy of our arts and crafts table, only added to the absurdity of the situation. "This facility is now under Yethrin protection," Commander X announced through his translator. "All civilian personnel will evacuate immediately." I looked up from where I was arranging snickerdoodles with a concerned frown. "Oh dear, there seems to be a scheduling conflict. We have the multi-purpose room booked until 4 for our bake sale. It's all in the official calendar." The commander's scales rippled with barely contained rage. "This is not a request, human. We are here to maintain order." "Maintain order?" I raised an eyebrow, glancing at the many PTA volunteers around the room. "At a PTA bake sale?" "Well, I suppose we could use help with crowd control," I said sweetly. "Would your troops like to volunteer? We're always in need of more parent volunteers." Behind me, I could hear Kyle's voice over the comms. "Combat units trying to access the east entrance, currently being delayed by Mrs. Davis's extended lecture on proper recycling procedures." "West entrance covered," Liam reported. 3 operators currently trapped in a heated debate about school dress code policies with the uniform committee." The commander's tail lashed in frustration. "You will cease this bake sale," he demanded, voice rising as his patience thinned. I raised an eyebrow, my smile unwavering. "I'm afraid we can't do that. We've already advertised. There would be very disappointed children." "You wouldn't want to disappoint the children, would you?" I paused for effect. "That might require filing an incident report in triplicate with the PTA grievance committee." His troops, meanwhile, were still trying to establish a tactical perimeter, but every attempt was interrupted by cheerful parents handing out sign-up sheets or offering coffee. Each time they tried to get into position, they were met with detailed discussions on next year's science fair or polite requests to join the newsletter committee. "Your resistance is futile," the commander declared, his tone aimed at intimidation, but it came off more like a struggling attempt at control. He was getting more frustrated by the second. "We have control of all strategic points." "Do you?" I asked innocently, not missing a beat. "Olivia, how's the ventilation system?" "Fully optimized for maximum glitter distribution," Olivia replied, her tone chipper. "Also, the commander's squad might want to move. They're standing directly under the—" The sprinklers suddenly erupted, dousing the elite troops in water mixed with what appeared to be biodegradable paint. "Very festive colors," I observed, watching the Yethrin forces getting soaked in pinks and purples. "It's hard to maintain a threatening presence when you're dripping glitter." "Oh dear," I said, quickly covering my baked goods with a napkin. "The sprinklers must be malfunctioning again. We really should form a committee to look into that." The commander raised his weapon only to find it completely jammed with glitter and craft supplies. His troops were facing the same issue. High-tech combat gear doesn't mix well with PTA arts and crafts. "This is your final warning," the commander snarled, his scales now flashing a fascinating shade of humiliated magenta. "No," I said, dropping the soccer mom act and letting the truth show. "This is yours. You're currently surrounded by 37 highly trained military operators who got bored with retirement and decided to become parents. That paint tracking compound, those glitter bombs, sensor disruptors, and that bake sale table you're trying to look menacing over? Reinforced tactical positions with enough firepower to make a battleship jealous." On cue, every seemingly innocent parent volunteer shifted slightly, revealing their true capabilities. The book club ladies by the entrance, former special forces, the dads discussing lawn care near the gymnasium, Marine Corps combat engineers, that group of moms comparing cookie recipes, the finest minds in military intelligence. "But your civilians," the commander protested. "Parents," I corrected with a smile. "Exactly. We're parents, which means we're highly trained military operators who have spent years perfecting the art of containing chaos, negotiating with unreasonable demands, and maintaining peace through superior practical planning. Also, we make excellent cookies. The granola bars are particularly good," Liam added, smirking. "The recipe is classified, though." The commander glanced around, finally noticing what his intelligence had missed. Every exit covered, every tactical advantage neutralized, every escape route blocked by a sign-up sheet for future volunteer opportunities. "Now then," I continued, adjusting my apron with a little too much satisfaction, "would you like to withdraw your forces with some dignity intact? Or should we start the PTA emergency response protocol? Fair warning, I added cheerfully. It involves paperwork. So much paperwork that even your most elite team wouldn't dare engage in hostile action. The commander tried one last time, his voice wavering. This is a school zone. Engaging hostile action? Us? I gasped in mock offense. We're just concerned parents ensuring school safety through entirely peaceful means, like our new zero-tolerance policy for unauthorized military operations during school hours. The policy documentation is only 700 pages long. Would you like us to review it all? Right now? The commander's scales turned a shade of defeat I didn't even know was possible. His troops, still struggling to clean glitter from their weapon systems, were being cheerfully offered wet wipes by parents who just happened to be former demolitions experts. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should review this situation through proper diplomatic channels. What a wonderful idea, I beamed. We have the Diplomatic Review Committee meeting right after the bake sale. Would you like to sign up for a time slot? We'll need your contact information for the newsletter. As the elite Yethran combat unit made their first tactical retreat from a PTA bake sale, I couldn't help but feel a little proud. They had sent their best operators, their most advanced combat units, and we had defeated them with glitter, baked goods, and the most terrifying weapon in any parent's arsenal, committee meetings. All hostiles withdrawing, Olivia confirmed through the comms. Should we pursue? No need, I replied, adjusting my cookie display with a satisfied grin. But do make sure they all take a copy of our monthly newsletter, the one with the 17-page addendum on proper school visit protocols. Sometimes the best way to win a battle isn't with superior firepower. Sometimes it's with superior organization skills and the kind of tactical planning that only comes from years of coordinating school events while maintaining operational readiness. After all, we're not just warriors anymore, we're parents, and that makes us so much more dangerous. Latest intercepts show they're still trying to explain to their high command how they got outmaneuvered by a PTA meeting, Liam added, flipping burgers with the same precision he once used to analyze enemy movements. He casually handed me a perfectly cooked patty, complete with a 17-page appendix on proper cultural exchange protocols, written in their own diplomatic language, of course. The new safety policies are officially in place, he continued, clearly enjoying himself. And now I think we can safely say that no one is going to mess with our kids again. Ethan, sporting his new I Survived Interstellar Academy t-shirt, strolled over with his friends. The former Yethran bullies were notably absent, having been transferred to a different school. Apparently, their parents weren't thrilled about them picking fights with the children of Earth's finest retired operators. Mom, Ethan said, grabbing a burger, my new friend wants to know if it's true you fought off an elite combat unit with glitter bombs? I smiled, adjusting my best BBQ 2024 apron, definitely not concealing any tactical gear beneath it. Oh, honey, that's ridiculous. We're just parents who are very involved in school activities. I leaned in closer with a playful glint in my eye. Though I suppose my Special Forces background might have helped with organizing the bake sale. If somewhere in the galaxy a Yethran military analyst was adding a new note to humanity's threat assessment, warning, Deathworlder parents are exponentially more dangerous than their military counterparts, well, that was just a little added bonus to a successful PTA semester. After all, nobody messes with our kids, not even an alien empire. Now then, I said, raising my glass, who's ready to start planning the next cultural exchange fair? The resulting laughter carried a note that would have made smarter species run for cover. But that's the thing about us Deathworlder parents. We're always ready for the next challenge, whether it's alien invasions or organizing the school carnival. Just don't ask about the glitter, I added with a wink. Some tactical advantages need to remain classified.